Today's lesson is the extraordinary frigate bird, master of the skies. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
Hello, I'm Kiki.
And in today's lesson, we're going to continue talking about the incredible, extraordinary, outstanding, fantastic frigate bird, which is a bird that lives in tropical regions. We mentioned last time that it lives in the Americas. So if you are in the Caribbean Sea on vacation to Jamaica or the Dominican Republic or to Cuba or whatever, you might expect to see these kinds of birds.
That's right. And they are described to be the master of the skies because of their very unique appearance and also the way they behave. Now, something special about them is the pouch on their throat, especially in males. They have a red throat pouch that is able to inflate during breeding season so they can attract females and have little babies.
Exactly. That's what you want to do if you're a boy. You want to get the attention of those girls. It sounds very similar to human behavior. When a guy sees a woman that he thinks is attractive, he kind of straightens up and sticks out his chest. It tries to look strong and macho, and that's what the male frigate birds do. They fill up that throat pouch, and the girls go, "Oh, wow, boy, do I want to get to know you."
That's right. So we've learned a little bit about what they look like and how they breed. Now let's find out more about their unique skills. Let's listen to part 1.
One of the most amazing attributes of frigate birds is their astonishing flying ability. Masters of the sky, they are capable of soaring for hours without even flapping their wings. Instead, they rely on thermal air currents to stay in the air, which allows them to preserve their energy as they hunt for food. Meanwhile, their keen vision helps them spot fish and other prey from high above the ocean, and they skillfully snatch their meals straight from the water's surface.
大家好，首先第一部分我们来介绍名词 attribute， 它的意思是属性、特质或是特性。例如 Vera's huge blue eyes are her most noticeable physical attribute. Vera 的超大蓝色眼睛是她最醒目的外观特质。又或者说 Patience is an important attribute for a teacher to have. 耐心是教师应具备的重要特质。接下来介绍 astonishing 这个形容词，意思是令人惊讶的或是非常惊人的。例如 Molly saw some astonishing animals on her trip to the jungle. Molly 在她的丛林之旅中见到一些惊人的动物。又或者说 The mountain climber showed an astonishing lack of fear as he scaled the sheer cliff. 那名登山者攀爬峭壁时展现出了惊人的无畏精神。接着是 soar 这个单字，它是动词，有翱翔、高飞或是奏声的意思。例如 The eagle soared through the sky, looking for prey on the ground. 老鹰在天空中翱翔，寻找地面上的猎物。或是 The company's stock soared following an upbeat earnings report. 该公司发表了鼓舞人心的营收报告后，股价跟着飙升。再来我们看到 thermal 这个形容词指的是热的或是由热引起的。举例来说 Some countries have thermal power stations. 有些国家有热力发电厂。下一个是形容词 keen， 表示目光或是听觉敏锐的、灵敏的，也可以是渴望的或是机灵的。例如 Sniffer dogs can find illegal drugs with their keen sense of smell. 嗅探犬可以用其灵敏的嗅觉找到违法毒品。也可以说 Catherine was keen to make a difference in the world after graduating. Catherine 渴望毕业后在世上发挥影响力。
Okay, it's time for us to discuss the first part of today's lesson. Again, we're talking about the characteristics, or in this case, the attributes of frigate birds. So one of the most amazing attributes of frigate birds is their astonishing flying ability. Now, here we've got the word attribute, which is a noun. It just means the special characteristics of something. This is a special feature. It's a unique feature that other birds don't have, and this is an amazing attribute. And we're also describing it as astonishing. More specifically, we're talking about its astonishing flying ability. If something's astonishing, it's amazing. If you see it, you're really surprised. You want to go, wow, that is really cool. Those birds can really fly.
Right. So their flying ability is so impressive that it is such an amazing attribute of these frigate birds. And that is the reason why they are called masters of the sky. They are capable of soaring for hours without even flapping their wings. Wow, that's pretty amazing because we know that if birds want to fly, they need to flap their wings. So to flap a bird's wings or to flap something, it is the action of moving something up and down when you are flying or preparing to fly. So apparently these frigate birds, they can go for hours without flapping their wings. They can soar for hours. What is soaring, Roger?
To soar means to fly high in the sky, to soar, but in this particular case, they're just kind of gliding on the air. They're coasting through the air. They're not really flapping their wings. And they do this because they have special knowledge about the way air currents work, which we'll get to in the next sentence. But again, they're flapping their wings probably when they're closer to the ground, but when they're high in the air, they are soaring because they understand those air currents.
Wow. So this must have something to do with their pointed wings, right?
Could very well be, or the aerodynamics or whatever, or the quality of their feathers or their body weight. There are probably all sorts of factors that allow them to soar in the sky without flapping their wings. A related word to flapping is the noun flap, which you will see on an airplane on its wings. Those are the parts on the wings that move up and down. Those are called the flaps, but of course that's a noun. Here we're using the word as a verb. They don't flap their wings because they can soar for hours really high in the sky, and instead they rely on thermal air currents to stay in the air, which allows them to preserve their energy as they hunt for food. So if something's thermal, it has to do with heat or warmth. For example, if you live in Canada or the United States and during winter and you want to go outside for an extended period of time, it might be a good idea to wear some thermal underwear.
Right. So thermals can keep you warm, and some thermals might even be able to produce a little bit of heat and help you keep the heat on you. Okay, so we have things like heat tech now that we can wear to really keep the warmth. Okay, so these birds, they need to use these thermal air currents. So this means that the air current is a bit warmer than the air surrounding the bird. So they're able to find these spots where the air is warmer to help them stay in the air.
Right. So, of course, you've got air currents in the atmosphere, just like you've got water currents in the ocean or in rivers. So they know about those currents, and you've got rising warm air, and they know where it is, so they can soar on that air current, and they stay in the air. And because of that, that allows them to save their energy, to preserve their energy, and use that energy later on when they hunt for food. And how do they hunt for food? Well, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But meanwhile, we're talking about another attribute here. They have this keen vision that helps them spot fish and other prey from high above the ocean. And they skillfully snatch their meals straight from the water's surface. So they've got keen vision, which means they've got really sharp, really wonderful eyesight. They can see things from a mile away.
Right. And when something is keen, it is a type of skill that is highly developed or a sense that is highly developed. So in this case, it is their vision or their ability to see. So they have very good vision that can help them spot fish or help them see fish and other prey from very high above the ocean. So from very far away, their vision is able to catch these moving animals or fish that they want to hunt.
Right, so they're looking down at the water and they're flying really high, maybe 500 feet or 1,000 meters or whatever, and they look down and they see something moving because they've got that keen vision. So they dive down and snatch their meals straight from the water's surface. Now here, to snatch just means to grab something quickly and suddenly. For example, one time I went to a bar and I got kind of drunk and I was going to drive myself home, but fortunately my friend snatched the keys away from me and drove me home instead, because I would have gotten in a terrible accident if I had driven the car while I was drunk. So yes, indeed, here these birds can snatch their meals right from the water's surface. Those poor fish, that's the end of the fish, and they won't be able to swim freely in the ocean anymore.
All right, that comes to the end of part 1. Let's listen to part 2.
Despite their brilliant flying and hunting abilities, frigate birds are not as proficient at diving into the water as some other seabirds. This has led them to develop a cunning and somewhat notorious feeding strategy. To compensate for their diving limitations, frigate birds often engage in kleptoparasitism, a behavior in which they harass other birds until they throw up their recently caught food. The frigate birds then steal and eat the meal, earning them the nickname Pirates of the Sky.
第二部分介绍 cunning， 它是形容词，意思是狡猾的或是奸诈的。例如Some stores use cunning strategies to make people spend more. 有些商店会用狡猾的策略让人花更多钱。再看一个例句 The cunning thief has managed to stay one step ahead of the police. 那名狡猾的小偷设法抢先警方一步。
Okay, let's start talking about part 2 now. It says, despite their brilliant flying and hunting abilities, even though they have these abilities, frigate birds are not as proficient at diving into the water as some other seabirds. So they're pretty good at diving into the water, but they're not as good as other seabirds. So they're not as proficient at diving into the water like some other seabirds. Okay, so they don't really have the greatest skills for diving into the water. They're good, but not as good as other birds. If you're proficient at something, you're good at something, but maybe not 100%. Okay, for example, you could say that someone is proficient in French, for example. They can communicate, they can have conversations, but we would not say that they're totally fluent.
That's right. And these birds, they're not as good as other seabirds when it comes to diving into the water. Okay, but this has led them, or because of this, it helped them develop a cunning and somewhat notorious feeding strategy. Okay, so because they're not good at diving, they have to come up with other ways of trying to get their food. Okay, so cunning is an adjective, and it is to have or show skill in achieving something for a person, so for yourself, by tricking someone or tricking something. So they must be trying to trick their prey in order to feed, right?
Yes, they have a great skill, but they do it secretly. They do it kind of immorally, I suppose you could say. They have this cunning. You could describe someone as being cunning. Yes, he has very cunning skills. He knows how to get what he wants. He knows how to manipulate people and has this cunning strategy. And we're also saying it's a notorious feeding strategy. If something's notorious, it's famous for probably a bad reason. And let's talk about this. To compensate for their diving limitations, frigate birds often engage in kleptoparasitism, a behavior in which they harass other birds until they throw up their recently caught food. That sounds kind of sneaky here. They need to compensate for their diving limitations. A limitation means you have a limit on something. You can only do it so well. And again, frigate birds can dive into the water, but they're not really that great at it, so they need to compensate for that. They need to make up for that. They need to do something else to balance things out. So what they do is they engage in something called kleptoparasitism. Now, I have to admit, when I was preparing for today's lesson, I had never seen this word before. It's not common. A more common word we use based on this klepto, which means to steal or to be a thief in Greek. We talk about someone who likes to steal things as a kleptomaniac, okay? Some people like to steal things just because they like to steal things, not because they need those things or they want those things. They just like to steal things. That's what a kleptomaniac is. And so here we've got something called kleptoparasitism.
Well, and also when we see this parasitism in this word, we can think of parasites, right? When something is parasitic or a parasite, it's something, a living organism that needs to live off of something in order to survive. So I wonder what this behavior is. Let's take a look. So kleptoparasitism is a behavior in which they harass other birds until they throw up their recently caught food. Wow, that's really annoying.
That's disgusting. Indeed, they exhibit this behavior, and they do this by harassing other birds. If you harass someone, you just bother them. You don't go away. You make them feel uncomfortable. You might harass someone in the office. We often talk about sexual harassment, where guys just won't leave the girls alone, and they make them feel uncomfortable, and that's what these birds do. They just kind of bother. They bully those other birds, and the birds say, all right, I'll just give you what I just ate, and they throw it up, and then the frigate birds get their meal. Again, that sounds kind of gross. I don't think I would enjoy eating someone else's vomit.
Well, these frigate birds, they sure enjoy eating other birds' recently caught food. So the frigate bird will steal the meal that somebody just threw up. So the other birds, they just barfed, and then the frigate birds will eat it, which gave them or earning them the nickname Pirates of the Sky.
And of course, you know, pirates are those fellas with the eye patches. Shiver me timbers, aye, matey, hoist the plank, or walk the plank, or whatever. So in this particular case, we've got pirates stealing things from other birds, and they sound kind of deceitful in that way. Okay, let's wrap things up now by listening to the third and final part of our lesson, and we'll come back to talk about it.
In short, frigate birds are truly remarkable creatures. Their unusual abilities and behaviors provide a particularly magnificent example of the diversity and wonder of the natural world. They remind us of the many enchanting species that inhabit our planet's remote and wild corners.
最后第三部分看到 enchanting 这个形容词的意思是迷人的或是令人陶醉的。例如 Paul's enchanting smile makes most girls weak at the knees. Paul 迷人的微笑让多数的女孩为之倾倒。最后一个例子 The little village was truly enchanting with its rustic charm. 这个小村庄因其质朴的魅力而十分令人着迷。
Okay, let's wrap things up. In short, frigate birds are truly remarkable creatures. So these frigate birds, they really are amazing because we've learned that not only do they look very unique, but they also have some very interesting behaviors, including kleptoparasitism.
Exactly. That's a special characteristic or attribute that they have. And also, their unusual abilities and behaviors provide a particularly magnificent example of the diversity and wonder of the natural world. So if we talk about diversity, we just talk about having all sorts of different things all over the place. Indeed, it is a wonderful world with lots of different kinds of animals and birds and people and things to check out. So indeed, it is an example of the diversity and the wonder of nature.
And they remind us of the many enchanting species that inhabit our planet's remote and wild corners. So in our big, beautiful world, we have a lot of enchanting species, okay? So enchanting is when something that is very charming or attractive. There are so many different types of animals and plants around the world that we are still learning about, and the frigate bird is only one example of the many different creatures that live in our planet's most remote and wild corners.
Right. Enchanting species. Enchanting just means they're charming, they're attractive. You could say that someone is wearing an enchanting dress to the ball tonight. And yes, indeed, they inhabit our planet's remote and wild corners. They just basically live all over the world. And in this particular case, the frigate birds live mostly in the tropics. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Here comes Hanny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分介绍了军舰鸟惊人的飞行能力。那有一句有写到说 They rely on thermal air currents to stay in the air. 他们依靠热气流停留在空中。Air current 就是指气流，那文中它是用到片语动词 rely on 来表达依靠。好，那当我们用 rely on 或者是 rely upon 表示依靠啊、依赖、仰赖，意思相当于 count on 或是 depend on， 后面可以接人或事物来当受词。那我们看两个例句。Pam relies on her brother to drive her to work. Pam 靠她哥哥开车载她去上班。这边我们是用人当受词。A lot of people rely on Facebook to keep in touch with their friends. 许多人靠 Facebook 和朋友保持联系。那这边我们是用事物当受词。好，那么这边也补充一个意思相近的片语动词 bank on. Bank 当动词原本有那种把钱存进银行的意思，那衍生的片语 bank on 就表示指望、仰赖。依靠或是确信，就好像你对某人事物的依靠，就如同信任在银行存钱一样。举例来说 If I were you, I wouldn't bank on him to fix the problem. 如果我是你，我不会指望他解决那个问题的。好，那么读到课文第二部分的第一句，他提到说，尽管军舰鸟拥有出色的飞行和狩猎能力，但它们并不像其他一些海鸟精于潜入水中。文中是用 proficient 来形容熟练的、精通的。那我们来学它的字首字根，看到 FIC、FICT 或者是 FAC、FACT 或者是 FECT 这一类的字根表示做、制作或是产生。像 fact 这个名词，它表示事实，那就是源自于实际上有做的事情这样的概念。还有像 factory 工厂，manufacture 制造，它们也都跟制作有关，可以看出这一类字根的意思。好，那我们看到在 proficient 这个字当中，字首 PRO 表示在点点点之前， FIC 表示做， ENT 是形容词字尾。那同学们可以试着想象，如果你对某事物很精通、很熟练啊，这个动作就会做得比别人快。那在别人做完之前，你就已经先把事情完成了。用这样的方式，也许可以想到 proficient 是形容熟练的、精通的。那它的名词是 proficiency， 把字尾 ENT 改成 ENCY， 那就表示熟练、精通。我们也补充一个有相同字根的单字是 deficient， 它的字首 DE 表示缺少、分离。那么字根 FIC 是制作， ENT 是形容词字尾。制作的东西有少，也许就可以联想到 deficient， 它是指缺乏的、不足的。那我们一样把 ENT 改成名词字尾 ENCY， 就会得到 deficiency， 那这个名词就表示缺乏、不足。好，以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天单字吧。
Attribute. Toby's patience is an attribute that has helped him in a number of challenging situations. Astonishing. The magician's astonishing performance left the audience in amazement. Soar. The eagle soared over the open fields, looking for a rabbit to eat. Keen. With its keen sense of smell, the police dog quickly picked up the trail of the escaped prisoner. Snatch. The thief tried to snatch the old lady's purse as she was walking down the street. Cunning. Ada employed a cunning strategy to achieve her goal without revealing her true intentions. Limitation. Recognizing her limitations, Nora designed her exercise routine to suit her abilities. Diversity. The city's neighborhoods have a rich diversity of cultures, languages, and traditions.
Discussion Starter starts now!
It's time now for our discussion starter for today. The question is, in addition to the kleptoparasitism of frigate birds, do you know any other unique survival strategies used by other animals?
Yes, one example of a special survival strategy is the ability to camouflage for many, many different animals, and especially different lizards. They're able to turn into the same color of the place that they're currently on so they can hide from their predators.
Well, this may not be a special attribute, but I'm thinking of spiders. They are able to spin their webs and they catch insects that way. Of course, they can't do it on their own, so they need to rely on that web in order to catch mosquitoes. And when those mosquitoes fly into the web, they're finished.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Kiki.
I am Roger.
See you next time.